I used to think our family was just strict. Old traditions, too many rules, never enough explanations. We weren't allowed to date, to move, or even to talk to outsiders for too long. Family first, they always said. Blood before everything. I believed them for a while. It sounded noble, almost sacred, until it became a prison. By the time I turned 19, I'd never been on a real date. Every friend I made had to be approved. Every conversation monitored. If someone from school texted me, my mother wanted to read it. If I hesitated, she'd say, "Why hide something if you've done nothing wrong?" It wasn't about protection, it was about control. They called it love, but it felt like surveillance. Then one night, they gathered the whole family for dinner. The kind of dinner where everything looked perfect. Polished plates, new candles, everyone dressed too nicely for no reason. Halfway through, my father cleared his throat and said, "It's time." I didn't understand at first. Then he turned to me and smiled that strange, rehearsed smile. "Your cousin Ahmed has agreed," he said. "You two will make a beautiful couple." The room went silent. My hands went cold. My aunt started crying. Happy tears, apparently. My mother gripped my arm so tight, I could feel her nails through the fabric. I didn't speak. I couldn't. It didn't feel real until everyone started congratulating each other. Clapping like this was a celebration, not a sentence. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't being asked. I was being assigned. When I said I wasn't ready, my father's face hardened. "You should be honored," he said. "This is how we keep the family pure." I wanted to scream, to tell them how wrong it was, but my voice caught in my throat. My mother whispered in my ear, "Don't embarrass us. People are watching." That's when I understood. It wasn't about faith, or love, or even tradition. It was about power. Their reputation mattered more than my freedom. That night, I cried quietly into my pillow, afraid they'd hear. By morning, my phone was gone. My ID too. My mother said it was for my own good. I wasn't allowed outside anymore unless someone came with me. When I refused to try on the dress my aunt had brought, my father said, "You're not a child anymore. You'll do what's right." Right. That word made me sick. For days, I tried to reason with them. Begged, pleaded, asked for time. They said I was being dramatic, that everyone goes through this fear before marriage. Fear. They said it like it was normal. Like fear was part of love. On the third night, I overheard them talking through the wall about dates, dowry, papers. All without me. I remember sitting there, knees to my chest, shaking. That's when it hit me. If I didn't leave now, I never would. It took 3 days to plan. I hid an old phone, memorized the bus routes, waited for a night when the house was quiet. When I finally ran, I didn't look back. Every step away from that house felt like a sin, but also like breathing for the first time. They taught me that running away was shameful, but staying would have killed me, piece by piece, until nothing of me was left. And years later, when I watched them being taken away in handcuffs, I didn't feel triumph. I just felt air fill my lungs again, slow, steady, honest. For the first time, I was free. And for the first time, I believed it. The second they announced it, the whole room shifted. Mom beamed like she'd just won the lottery. A tight, plastic smile stretched across her face, and Dad nodded like we were all supposed to celebrate some big achievement of his, not mine. "We're so proud," they said over and over. Proud of me getting engaged. Like it was the best thing I'd ever done. Like it was my choice. But I knew. Right then, I knew. This wasn't about me. Not really. Everyone else was smiling, raising their glasses like it was a party, but inside, my chest felt like it had been crushed. It felt like someone had locked the air out of the room, like I was trapped underwater, and everyone was pretending it was normal to hold their breath forever. Before that night, I kind of thought this engagement was, well, kind of mutual. Maybe I was naive. But now, sitting at that polished dining table, surrounded by people who should have been on my side, it hit me. This was an order. The engagement wasn't a celebration of love. It was a command wrapped in carefully rehearsed traditions and polite words. "You're doing this," they said without saying the words. And I wasn't allowed to say no. The table was set perfectly, with those ridiculous white napkins folded into little swans, and the chandeliers spilling gold light over everything. But the warmth didn't reach me. I stared down at my plate while my aunt made a toast, her voice too sharp, too fake. "To our new family member," she said, clinking her glass with my fiancé's. Everyone else lifted their glasses, but I just sat there, trying not to throw up. I could see it in my fiancé's eyes too. He wasn't thrilled. We both knew this wasn't what we wanted. But he mouthed a quick, almost apologetic smile at me, and I looked away. No way to fight here without making things worse. The room was buzzing with conversations about wedding plans, upcoming family visits, who was bringing what to the rehearsal dinner, and all these meaningless details that made it feel like a performance. My cousin laughed too loud. My uncle kept checking his watch, and yet the whole evening was held together by this fragile thread of forced happiness. I tried to speak up once, just a quiet protest under my breath, asking if we could maybe slow things down, talk about what I wanted. But my mom cut me off, voice low but sharp. We've already sacrificed so much for this to go smoothly. It's time to move forward. I froze, the weight of those words shutting down any fight I had left. It felt like I was being boxed in tighter with every second, the walls closing until all I could hear was the clinking of forks and the murmur of people agreeing on what I was supposed to do next. At that moment, something inside me cracked. Fear crept in, sharp and sudden. Not because I was scared of my fiancé or the family. It was the fear of losing myself completely in this whole charade. Like my life wasn't mine anymore. I looked across the table, catching my dad's eye for a second. His face was hard, no softness like before. It wasn't pride I saw, it was expectation. No room for doubt or hesitation. And despite all the smiling, the carefully chosen words, the polite applause at the end, no one asked me if I really wanted this. Everyone clapped. I just sat there, swallowing hard, feeling my throat close up. The noise was a blur, like I was underwater, desperate not to scream or run. I trusted no one in that moment, not even myself, because I realized I was already trapped. I wanted to scream that this was wrong, that I didn't want to move forward like this, but the words wouldn't come out. The night ended with hugs and photographs. My fiancé whispered, "I'm sorry," just loud enough for me to hear. I nodded, but inside, I was already trying to disappear. I remember the moment I decided I couldn't keep pretending. I cornered them in the living room after dinner. The house was quiet except for the clock ticking way too loud. I told them I needed to talk, something serious. They looked at me like I'd stepped into the twilight zone. "You're being selfish," my dad said before I even opened my mouth. "You don't understand what's at stake." I tried to explain, but as soon as I said I wanted to back out, my mom's face twisted like I'd slapped her. "This is God's will. You're part of this family. Refusing him means you're cursing all of us," she said, voice almost breaking. The way they said it, like it was some kind of damn destiny or punishment waiting if I stepped out. It wasn't just a conversation. It felt like a trap tightening around my throat. I kept asking how it could be right, how this made any sense to me. But their eyes didn't soften. If anything, they grew colder. They started listing everything I owed them, sacrifices they made, prayers they said, all the times they put their faith ahead of their own doubts. And suddenly, my anger turned sharp and bitter. I wanted to scream that none of that meant I had to live like this, like my voice didn't matter. They said I was ungrateful for questioning, that I was tearing the family apart. My dad stared me down, voice low but steady. "You're either with us, or you're against us. You need to make that choice." The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in, pinning me between their expectations and my own shaking doubts. I caught the way my mom's hands were trembling behind her, her eyes flickering like she was mad at me, but also scared. Maybe they believed what they were saying. Maybe it gave them some comfort in this mess. But I knew one thing. I was done being a pawn in their holy war. When I burst out that maybe the family did need cursing if this is what counted as loyalty, the silence that followed was heavy enough to choke on. They didn't answer. I hoped for something, a crack in their armor, but all I got was quiet judgment. Walking away after that, I felt hollow and furious all at once, but the confusion was gnawing too. How had everything I thought I knew flipped into this nightmare? Maybe I was crazy for wanting out. Or maybe, I can't help but think this, maybe they were the ones afraid to lose control. I wanted to believe there was an escape, but I was starting to realize there wasn't. Not without breaking something, or someone, beyond repair. I barely dared to breathe as I pressed my phone against my chest, hiding it under the jacket I'd stolen from the closet. The house was too quiet. Every creak felt like a warning. I kept thinking, if they find this, it's over, but I had no choice. Someone outside needed to know. I texted Jenna, my friend from college, the only person I trusted with anything real. I didn't want to call. That would be too loud, too easy to trace. But the messages had to be quick, Scattered. Almost code. Asterisk I'm stuck. Need out. Tonight. Asterisk. I felt my heart in my throat the whole time, waiting for her reply. When it finally buzzed, my hand shook so much I almost dropped the phone. Meet at the corner store in 45. That little line might as well have been a lifeline. I slipped the phone deeper into my jacket and started moving toward my room. Every step felt wrong, like I was making noise someone could hear. I paused at the hallway, froze. Somewhere down the hall, a door creaked, then slammed shut. My breath hitched. I swallowed it down and kept going. Then out of nowhere, footsteps, sharp, deliberate, were coming. I blinked, heart flipping, and turned toward the shadow at the far end of the hallway. Mom. Before I could react, she was on me, hands twisting my arm, grabbing the phone with a speed I didn't expect. "What are you doing?" she whispered, voice low but ice cold. I wanted to lie, say something stupid like I was checking the time, but my throat was tight. The phone felt heavier all of a sudden, and I could almost hear the hope draining out of me. She pried it out, and I fought the urge to snatch it back. We stood there, frozen under each other's stare, both breathing fast. I could see something in her eyes. Disappointment? Anger? I couldn't tell, but it made me feel smaller than ever. Without a word, she headed upstairs, the phone clutched like a trophy. I was left standing alone, the hallway suddenly wide and empty, but suffocating all the same. Every shadow seemed to mock me. I wanted to scream or run, but I just leaned against the wall, struggling to get air into my lungs. I heard doors open and close upstairs, muffled voices, but no one came back down. I waited for what felt like forever, the silence between sounds threatening to burst my chest. Then, out of nowhere, I felt this sharp stab of something. Was it panic? Desperation? I wasn't sure anymore. My mind kept screaming asterisk, what now? What now? Asterisk. But somewhere underneath all that fear, a tiny, stubborn flicker of hope held on. Jenna knew. She could help. I just had to find another way. Maybe if I played it cool, acted like nothing was wrong, I could figure out a new plan. I sank down, back pressing against the cold wall, trying to steady my breath. I thought I was done trying, but I wasn't. The problem was, now they were watching, and every sound in the hallway felt like a lock clicking shut. The moment he finally passed out upstairs, I didn't hesitate. My hands were shaking as I crawled over to the window. It wasn't much, just this small bedroom window I'd used when I was a kid to sneak out. I didn't even bother trying to unlock the front door, not after tonight. I pushed the window open slowly, careful not to make a sound, but the old hinges protested like they wanted to give me away. The cold night air hit my face, and for a second, I just froze. Everything felt unreal, like I was already somewhere else, but I was still stuck there, hiding in that room that felt less like home now than a trap. I looked down to the ground. It was about 8 feet, maybe more. My heart was pounding so loud I thought he'd hear it eventually. I could feel the rough paint under my fingers as I lowered myself out the window, then let go. I hit the ground hard. My bare feet scraped against the gravel, sharp little stones digging into the skin. I bit back a curse and didn't stop to look down. I ran. Just ran. The cold bit at my skin, and my breath came out in jagged gasps, but I didn't care. I didn't slow. The streetlights flickered above, messy halos in the dark, and every shadow seemed alive. The bus station wasn't far, just a 10-minute run, but it felt endless. My feet bled a little. I kept thinking, maybe someone will see me, maybe they'll call the cops, or he'll somehow catch me before I get there. But when I saw the station's neon sign humming low and steady, I let myself think, maybe I'm okay now. I slipped inside just as the rain started, soft at first, then heavier. I sat on one of those cold metal benches, hunched over, trying to catch my breath. My whole body was trembling, some from cold, some from the terror that still ran through me. But there was relief too. It was raw and fragile, like the night could still break me at any moment, but at least for now, I was out. I knew I couldn't stay here. It wasn't safe, not really. I pulled my phone out, hands slick from sweat and rain, and called Sarah. She was the only person I thought where I wouldn't have to explain everything right away. When she picked up, her voice was calm but sharp, like she'd been waiting for this call. "Where are you?" she asked. "At the bus station. Barefoot," I said, my voice cracking. "Okay, I'm coming." I hung up and tried not to cry, but my chest was so tight it felt like I might break. The fear hadn't left me, not really. It was just quieter, waiting for the next moment to explode. When Sarah showed up, she didn't say much. She just pulled my jacket around me and led me to her car. I sat in the back, shivering, skin sticky with rain and sweat, trying to wrap my head around the fact that I was actually free. But freedom didn't feel like flying. It felt like falling and hoping the ground was soft. I was thankful, yes, but there was this heavy weight too, a pit in my stomach full of things I wasn't ready to face. At her place, I washed off the dirt and blood, but the marks inside, the ones no water could clean, that stayed. Sarah didn't ask questions. She just gave me space. I stared at the ceiling, hearing the distant hum of the city, trying to believe that maybe the nightmare was over. But there was this voice in my head that wouldn't shut up. What did I leave behind? What did I lose forever? And why did I feel so guilty for just walking away? Like somehow, I was the one who'd failed. I looked at my hands, still trembling, and realized I couldn't go back now. Not ever. But I also knew this night wouldn't be the end of the story. It felt like the start of something fragile and dangerous, a life where I was supposed to be free, but all I felt was this raw, aching fear beneath the relief. I wanted to tell Sarah, to scream it out loud, but I didn't have the strength yet. I closed my eyes and listened to the silence, trying to believe that the next morning wouldn't bring the shadows back. But even in the dark, I knew they hadn't left for good.